I'm Pierre Thomas, Chief Justice Correspondent for ABC News. Also, and I'm proud to say, past chairman of the Reporters Committee and Freedom of the Press. And it's with great joy that today I get to talk to and have a conversation with our Fred Graham Distinguished Service Award honorees, Sandra Torre and Tony Mauro. This is a great joy. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. And I'll hand it over to Sandra to introduce herself.
Hello, Pierre. Nice to be with you and Tony this morning. I'm Sandra Torre. I am semi-retired from the USA Today editorial board, still do some writing for them. And I have been on the steering committee of the Reporters Committee since 2000 and have twice had the honor of being chairman of the committee.
Wow. Tony?
Yes, it's great to see both of you, and I'm very fortunate to have this award given to me and to Saundra. I've been affiliated with the Reporters Committee since 1984, and it's the most important organization I've ever been with, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, this, again, is just a treat, and it's really a privilege to get a chance to talk to both of you, two people I admire greatly. I wanted to start out the conversation by simply asking the question, what drew you both to journalism? And we'll start with Saundra. What was it about journalism that made you want to make it your life's work?
I think when I was a journalist, even when I was in grade school, I was one of the editors of our little mimeograph newspaper, which reveals my age. And I loved telling stories, and I loved getting a chance to talk to all sorts of people, ask them questions. I mean, you get to talk to brilliant people when you're in journalism and know what they think about things. And I think it's important, very important, that the public knows what's going on in the government. And so all those things mixed together drew me to journalism from the time I was quite young.
Tony, for you?
The same for me. I've been a reporter since sixth grade, and always thought that this was the best job I could ever have. And I've been fortunate to cover the Supreme Court over the years, over decades, and couldn't be happier. I've always felt reporters are in the middle of the fray, and we need to be on top of things, but to convey to the public what is going on. It's a great profession, and I'm happy to be there.
You know, one of the things that strikes me about our profession, and there's so much made about the quote media, and a lot of it's negative, but there's a lot of public service in people like yourselves who made this their life's work, in a sense of wanting to provide the American public with information so they can make the choices that they need to make. Do you share that belief that there's a certain amount of public service that's involved in our job that we don't talk about enough? And Tony, you can go ahead and keep going.
Oh, absolutely. It really is a public service. Where the public doesn't always feel that way. We're not a most popular profession. But I think at the end of the day, most people understand that journalism is an important profession, and that we are conveying to the public what they need to know. And so I think it really is a public service.
Sandra?
And I think Tony's put it very well. I think we're going through a difficult time, and have been for a number of years, where the sentiment about reporters has really dropped. I think part of this has occurred during the Trump era, but I think he was more of a symptom of this than the cause of it. And I think that many people don't know what we do and how important it is to the public. But our reward for doing it is being part of and in on some of the major historical events of our lifetime, and knowing that we know that we're doing something good. So that's the reward. Also, it's really fun many days. So that's rewarding too.
You know, and I'm going to get to the Reporters Committee in a moment, but I wanted you both to take a moment to talk about some of the more consequential stories that you covered in your storied careers. And, you know, if there's a moment that either of you can point to where you, in the midst of covering the story, went, wow, I'm covering history. This is something very consequential that I'm trying to report on and convey to the public. Sandra?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, one of the major things I did was covering 9/11. I was with the editorial board at the time, and I wrote some of our first editorials on that horrible day. And yes, of course, I felt I was being part of history, but a part we all wish had never occurred. So, but that was one highlight of my career. And in covering courts, one of the things that I've enjoyed most, I've covered courts in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Chicago, and they've often been at the center of important stories going on. I was part of the coverage of the Bush-Gore election and going to the Supreme Court after that. And I've written, one of the things that I've written extensively about is court secrecy. And that's been very important to me, the secret settlements that keep important life-saving information away from the public. And it turns out what you don't know can hurt you. And I've worked hard and many times to call for it, again, at the editorial board, to call for new laws so we open up those secret settlements and no more of them occur. Haven't been successful yet on that, but I hope someday that will happen. And also covered the negotiations leading up to the multi-billion-dollar settlement between the tobacco industry and the states, and then went on to cover a bill in Congress sponsored by John McCain that would have put tobacco under federal regulation. Unfortunately, at the end, it failed, but they'll keep trying.
Tony, let's talk about some of your more memorable moments as well, and any of them that stood out to you that you find yourselves in your semi-retired state going, wow, that was a hell of a day or series of days.
Well, it really has been fun and an honor. I've covered the confirmation of every single justice since Sandra Day O'Connor.
Wow.
And some of those have been good. Some of those have been awful, those hearings. But I was in the middle of history, and it was terrific. And I've been decisions, ranging from death penalty cases, abortion, affirmative action, all kinds of issues, and First Amendment issues as well. And those have been very important for me. But the one thing that I did that no one else had done is I studied the law clerks of the Supreme Court. And I realized that these young people who have tremendous power, and yet most of them are white males. So I did for USA Today, I did a lengthy series on the lack of diversity among the law clerks. And it caused quite a stir. So, some civil rights groups protested in the front of the Supreme Court and saying, you need more diversity among the law clerks. And one justice after that told me, you really opened up the eyes of the justices and the law professors, put forward the potential law clerks And so I feel like I made a difference. And I think that it's still not as much diversity as we would like, but certainly a lot more women and minority individuals have become law clerks. So that's my biggest story.
Well, just hearing you both, it's just wonderful to, sort of consider the work that you've done. And again, we don't have time to go through all the details of it, but I wanted the people viewing this to get a sense of, look, it's a reminder of how consequential the work can be in terms of what the public is going to consume about their society. You talked about everything from abortion to civil rights just now. And that leads me to the conversation about the Reporters Committee and why you both have dedicated years, decades of your lives to this cause. When did you first hear about the Reporters Committee, and what made you decide to become a part?
I didn't know much about the Reporters Committee until Don Graham, I was working for the Washington Post at the time, our publisher Don Graham decided to take a bunch of us who covered legal beats to a benefit dinner for the Reporters Committee sometime in the mid 1990s. And I went, I saw the people they were honoring, listened to the speeches by people about what the Reporters Committee does. And from that moment on, I said, I want to be part of this. And the Reporters Committee steering committee is made up of one representative from each major news outlet. So the Post already had someone on the committee, Chuck Babcock. But luckily, when I moved in 1999 to USA Today's editorial board, at that time, Tony was moving to American Lawyer. And I don't remember exactly why he knew that I was so interested, but he called me and said, would you like to represent USA Today on the board? And I jumped at that chance and had been doing so ever since.
Amazing. Tony, what drew you in?
Well, it was when I first came to Washington in 1979 to cover the Supreme Court for Gannett and USA Today. And as Saundra mentioned, the major news organizations had representation in the committee. And so my boss said, you know about Supreme Court, you know about First Amendment issues, why don't you do it? And I was great because I thought I had known about the Reporters Committee. I knew how important it was helping journalists with issues that the government officials were closing the doors on them. It was a stormy era for journalists. And when I saw how much the Reporters Committee was doing for free, I thought this is great. Nobody who has come to the Reporters Committee for help has ever had to pay a penny for that help.
That's just extraordinary. And starting with you, Tony, since you're already on camera here, talk about what you see the mission as being now, and has it changed at all from the day you walked through those doors to become a part of the committee?
Well, I think the mission is largely the same, to help journalists do their work when government and other folks don't want us to do our work the way we need to. But what has changed the most really is when in 2012, when Bruce Brown became the executive director, and we took it a different direction. Instead of just having hotlines for journalists in trouble and other types of things, we decided to do some litigation to put real teeth into what we do and to make a difference. Cases that would be very important for all journalists. There was some hesitancy. Some of the older Reporters Committee members thought, gee, we don't want to be a law firm where we're journalists. And I decided, I thought we can do both. And that's what we've done. And I think it's been a tremendous change, a tremendous work that the Reporters Committee is doing.
And Saundra, before you start, for some of the people who may be tuning into the gala who are not as familiar, at the end of the day, if you look at the basic components of what we do, we help journalists pursue the information that we think that we are due to have, that we should have. And when journalists are the subject of litigation themselves, targeted, if you will, we can stand in the gap for them and help them through those legal squabbles. So in some ways, it was relevant then, and it's never been more relevant than now. Go ahead, Sandra.
Well, actually, part of realizing the importance of the Reporters Committee mission is that I've had my own brushes with issues over confidentiality and press freedom. In fact, I was once almost arrested. I was a Washington Post reporter at the time, and I was covering the federal court. I was in the federal courthouse and had gone into the where the Circuit Court of Appeal judges chambers are, and talked to some people on a Saturday morning that I was there to see. And then as I was leaving, a fairly new judge on the circuit stopped me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "You don't have to worry, Your Honor. I'm not a criminal. I'm a reporter from the Washington Post. And I was just here and I'm about to leave." And I think I would have been better off being a criminal that day than a reporter, given his reaction. And I'll be kind to him and not mention who it was. And he said, "No, you have to tell me who you were here seeing and exactly why you were here so I can check that." He wouldn't back down. He called the marshals and asked them to arrest me. Wow. And I got very lucky. A very sensible marshal just calmed him down a bit and said, "Don't worry, sir, I'll take her downstairs and we'll take care of this." And we walked downstairs, and on the way down, he said, "Look, I don't want to arrest you. So if you're leaving, just get out of here and I'll figure out a way to write this with the judge." And I know that part of the reason I could be so strong was because I had a paper that I knew the lawyers could come and get me and nothing terrible would happen to me. But I often think about people at smaller papers or freelancers, and for them, what we provide allows them to feel that same confidence and be able to stand up for these important missions that we have, not to reveal sources and to tell real stories. So that's what did it for me.
This is personal and professional for you. You don't dedicate this much time to something that has required a lot of time and energy without having not just a commitment to it, but a love and a passion for it. Why have you done this so long, been engaged, and continue to be engaged? Go ahead, Sandra.
Because as we've already touched on, this is so important to the public to have open government, no secrecy, have reporters be able to report stories that many people don't want us to tell about corruption and so forth. That, as I grew in my career and learned more about these things, I felt it was so important it was a privilege, in fact, to be part of a committee who is working on those issues all the time. And by being on the committee, I feel I was part of that mission. And I think, as I think I said earlier, it's a particularly important time now with so many newspapers closing, merging. We're losing many of the small papers and medium-sized papers across the country. And I think government officials, the ones who want to keep secrets, feel that they can get away with it more now because there are fewer local papers and there's less money for papers to go after them in court. So our mission becomes even more urgent today, and I'm glad to still be part of it.
Tony, what say you on the topic in terms of why so much of your time? I can remember when I first joined the committee, just how diligent you were. And even though you had been chairman, you still were engaging and still were helping out with various issues. Even I know Saundra could turn to you at a moment's notice to do things, even though many would say you've done your part. Why such a commitment so long?
Well, this may sound corny, but when I underwent chemotherapy for cancer in 1985,
Wow.
I didn't go to work for very often because I was ill, but I did go to every steering committee meeting during that period because I felt it was so important.
Amazing.
The committee has done so much work, and there's so much to do. I've done all kinds of work for the committee, done a history of the committee. I've done sort of infrastructure type things for the committee. We updated the bylaws and things like that. And we also had all sorts of things we tried to do to tell journalists how important the committee was. We had, with the Freedom Forum over the years, we had a barbecue with a view. It was a
I remember that, yes.
fundraising group, a fundraising entity, but it was also getting journalists together to learn about the Reporters Committee and learn about the First Amendment, and they all kind of realized that, and it was a good thing. One other thing I'll just mention is that the Reporters Committee has had a huge number of interns and fellows over the years who have been very important for the committee, and we always enjoyed that. I would take them to the Supreme Court to see how the Supreme Court works, and now they sort of fanned out around the country. They're First Amendment law professors, they're media lawyers, and I think that's one of the most important things the committee has done over the years, over the decades.
I'm now officially a grizzled Washington correspondent myself, and doing it a while, and I'm just so inspired hearing you both talk about the commitment, because if anyone who is trying to understand what the Reporters Committee is about, take your two pictures and put it in a dictionary beside Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press, and you would have a very clear understanding of who we are, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. And I would like for you both to talk about why the people watching tonight should want to contribute and support the Reporters Committee, because look, we're honoring you, but this ends up being a testimonial for why the Reporters Committee is so important. Saundra, why don't we start with you? Just, let the folks out there know yet again why you dedicated so much of your life and time, and why they should feel good about participating, contributing, and supporting the Reporters Committee.
Well, the Reporters Committee work really spans the kinds of things that people tend to read about, know about, big media cases. For instance, the Reporters Committee wrote an amicus brief in a case they're hoping to get cert on in the Supreme Court this year about a very important issue having to do with recording police, video recording police while they're doing their duty in public places. And a number of the circuits, I think practically all the odd numbered circuits, first, third, fifth, et cetera, have made it clear that there is a clear right, not just for journalists, but for anyone to do that. And thank God for that, because remember Darnella Frazier, the 17-year-old who videotaped the George Floyd murder and got a special citation from the Pulitzer Committee for that. And boy, she deserved it.
Indeed.
So police need to know that people are allowed to do that. So on one hand, we have this amicus brief trying to overturn a 10th Circuit ruling that said police have qualified immunity for having detained and threatened to arrest a bystander who was taping something that he believed there was excessive force being used. Luckily, they did not take his tape away, and he still had it. But that's going to the Supreme Court, and we're hoping it will clear this up completely. And there's also work the Reporters Committee does behind the scenes every day. The Reporters Hotline in 2019 had a record number of calls, and then again broke that record in 2020 with more than 500 calls, I think, for more than 100 different people at different publications and freelancers. And what the hotline does is either they will answer a question, how do I get into this meeting? How do I get these public records? As well as representing people in crises. So a reporter, for instance, at the Denver Post, who had come from the Topeka, Kansas paper, had written about a wrongful conviction. And he suddenly realized he was checking a docket and found out that he was being subpoenaed by the Attorney General of Kansas to bring all his notes and testify and, talk about everything he knew, including from confidential sources. He called the hotline. One of our lawyers, Sarah Matthews, agreed to represent him. And this also shows why it's important for reporters to stand up for themselves. He began tweeting about this. And it was picked up. It was picked up by the Kansas papers and the Kansas Press Association, who started putting out information saying, this is ironic. The Attorney General was one of the sponsors of the Kansas Media Shield Law, and now he's subpoenaing a reporter. Within 2 days, the Attorney General said it was all a mistake. He wasn't aware of what was going on. And they quashed the subpoena, and that was the end of it. So both lawyering and reporters standing up for their rights are both important things that the committee deals with.
Someone sitting out there tonight watching this conversation, and they're wondering what they can do. Speak to the journalists about why we welcome their support, why we want them engaged with the Reporters Committee in whatever fashion they might choose to be.
Well, I think I would answer that by just saying, think about the last 4 years and the former president who did his best to try to make things difficult for journalists, and that's okay. All presidents don't like the press after a while, but this was a tremendous load that the former president put on journalism, and it was a tremendous work that the Reporters Committee did to fight back, and that's what we need. We need to continue that. Even now, there's a new president. There are still issues to be dealt with, including the very recent piece of work that Bruce Brown did with the Justice Department, Attorney General Garland, about when journalists can be subpoenaed or have their
emails and phone checks
and all that kind of thing. And it has worked out tremendously well. And I think that's the kind of work that we still need to do, whether the presidents like us or not. We'll be there.
And Saundra, I wanted to take a moment. Tony raised a few moments ago the notion of the importance of diversity in the Supreme Court, in the clerks. I personally think it's been important to have had you, as our chairman, a woman, and you had a career where when you first started, weren't that many women in journalism necessarily. Talk a little bit about that role, I don't know if you thought about it as you were doing it, of pioneering, covering legal issues, and assuming a leadership role in the journalism community.
Well, it's funny. When I was going through it at the time, which was at the Chicago Daily News, where I started working before I left college, I was a copy aide, which they would joke about and yell, boy, because there'd only been copy boys before me. And when I joined the news staff, I believe there were only 3 women on the city desk at the time. But again, I never thought about it during those times about being a pioneer for legal coverage. But long afterwards, I realized I was and today though, I mean, there are so many women in journalism, it's really changed. And there are certainly more Black journalists, which I'm sure you could speak to better than I can. But the news media is supposed to be so liberal, but in the 70s, again, it was still a job that very few women had. They weren't, practicing what they preached. But I was lucky because the Daily News was a great place to be a young reporter. I had loads of mentors, and I really learned, God, covering Chicago is really like a, group. There's so much corruption that all you have to do is, get on a story and you're going to find something corrupt. And that's when I started covering courts as well.
So it sounds like it's all intertwined. The notion of openness, diversity, shedding light in dark places, commitment to the First Amendment, all of this converges in the kind of people that have been a part of the Reporters Committee leadership, and you two exemplify that to the highest degree. Like I said, this has been just a real treat for me to just have a conversation with people I so admire and not only admire, but like. Again, you welcomed me in to the Reporters Committee at a time when I was, had become part of the television industry, television journalism after having a long stint at the Washington Post. And I remember at the time thinking, well, wow, I'm pretty busy. But then when you get in and you see the commitment of people like yourselves, you go, this is the least that I can do to help our profession and to push forward. So I just want to thank you again. I can't think of 2 more deserving Fred Graham Distinguished Service Award honorees. You represent the best of the Reporters Committee, and it's been a privilege to know you and work with you. So with that, we're finishing up. I wish we could talk longer. I could talk to you guys for hours. It's just been that much of a joy to honor you in this way, to have this conversation. The Reporters Committee is in your debt.